The governor's move to commute the sentences of death row inmates is heavily criticized by a former Deschutes County prosecutor. Josh Markey prosecuted 3 times the man convicted of killing a couple in Terrebonne. That man, Randy Guzek, had his sentence commuted by the governor from death to life without parole. Kathy Marshall's here now with a look at the case. Kathy?
Lee, the case is 35 years old, but the brutal images it brought to a courtroom are still tough to shake for Josh Markey. He expresses extreme disappointment in Governor Brown's decision to commute the sentence of convicted killer Randy Guzek.
Governor has a very, very limited role, and the idea of blanket commutations flies in the face of the whole idea of the rule of law.
As Deschutes County Deputy DA, Josh Markey prosecuted Randy Guzek in 3 of his 4 trials for the 1987 killings of Rod and Lois Hauser.
Guzek at the time was 18 years old and was a star student at Redmond High School. He was the recipient of several scholarships. And when he went to trial 4 separate times in Bend, a number of fellow students, teachers, and administrators from Redmond High all came and testified about what a great kid he was.
Markey says Guzek was with 2 others when he went to the remote Terrebonne home of the Hausers and knocked on the door.
When Mr. Hauser opened it, Randy Guzek said, "Do it," to Mark Wilson. Mark Wilson had a Ruger 10-22 rifle that he had been provided by Mr. Guzek. He then shot Mr. Hauser 22 times. Mrs. Hauser, the only other person in the house, was coming down the staircase.
Markey says Guzek then chased Lois Hauser and shot her several times.
Then they went on to ransack the house and then deliberately tried to make it look as though it was by their words, a cult killing.
Guzek was sentenced to death in 1988, but the Oregon Supreme Court overturned the sentence 3 times, leading to a 4th trial.
Primarily, it was that he had planned the intentional and deliberate murder of this couple.
With the governor's commutation and a Senate bill passed in 2019 narrowing the definition of aggravated murder, Markey believes Guzek will get a parole hearing in the next 18 to 36 months.
And so for many of those inmates, they will get parole hearings. Now, it doesn't guarantee they'll be released, but for many of the victims and many of the prosecutors, the idea that many of these really horrific murderers will even be eligible to be released is almost unthinkable.
In announcing the decision, Governor Brown called the death penalty dysfunctional and immoral, saying the state should not be in the business of executing people. When she took office in 2015, she continued a moratorium on executions started by John Kitzhaber. In 1981, the Oregon Supreme Court did rule the death penalty unconstitutional, but Oregon voters reinstated it in 1984. Kathy Marshall, News Channel 21.